Welcome to the Tech Blog Writer Podcast, your guide to future tech trends and innovation in a language you understand. Now, over to your host, Neil Hughes.
Welcome back to another episode of the Tech Blog Writer Podcast. How are we all doing? I hope you're all set for the weekend and everything is good in your world. And one of the things I keep reading about at the moment, or one of the trends I keep seeing, is about how humans take their bias, albeit unwittingly, into the hiring process. Why? Because without realising it, when interviewing a candidate, our subconscious wants to choose someone that looks just like us, thinks like us, and maybe even has a similar background, so we can relate on a common level. However, this is possibly the worst thing you can do because all of your customers, all of your clients are from diverse backgrounds. So if your workforce isn't diverse, how can you really impact and appeal to them all if your workforce is just one-dimensional? I think it's a fantastic topic, and if you're interested in the psychology of all that, you're probably fascinated too. But this is a tech show, right? And many of you have probably sat there thinking, well, tech can remove bias. I'm sorry to break this to you, but machines, they're biased too. Why? Because humans are biased. And who teaches the machines? That's right, humans. So when artificial intelligence is being integrated into HR departments in an effort to take out bias out of hiring, maybe we need to take a step back and ensure we're taking the bias out of AI first. So this led me to a company called HiringSolved, a startup that creates the first Siri-like AI-powered assistant to help recruiters identify talent and build that diverse workforce. And they're working on doing just that with an update to their tool, which is pronounced RAY, and it stands for Recruiting Artificial Intelligence. So HiringSolve do exactly what their name suggests, and by their own definition, they're like Google for talent. But I wanted to find out more about the way that they're working and their unique approach, so I invited them on the show today. So buckle up and hold on tight as I beam your ears all the way back to the US so we can speak with Shon Burton, CEO of HiringSolved. So a massive warm welcome to the show. Can you tell the listeners a little about who you are and what you do?
So my name is Shon Burton. I'm the founder and CEO of HiringSolved. HiringSolved is an automation company that works in the HR tech space. So we're doing a lot of automated decision making. I try to stay away from the AI word, but ultimately what we do is it is powered by AI, utilizing machine learning and neural networks and all that fun stuff, and ultimately to help employers make better hiring decisions and be more productive in hiring.
I don't want to be the guy that mentions the AI word again, but when I was doing a bit of research on you guys, I mean, HiringSolve seemed to me to be a startup that created the first Siri-like AI-powered assistant that actually helps recruiters identify talent to build a diverse workforce. But can you set the scene and tell anyone listening who's hearing about you for the first time exactly what HiringSolved is, what problems you solve, and also what makes HiringSolve unique from all those other tech solutions out there?
Sure. So HiringSolved is, first of all, it's a big name, and it's something that we're growing into. We do aim to solve hiring. Today, where we are in that mission is we focus specifically in talent acquisition because today we see on the enterprise side, we focus on in helping companies find, identify, sort, and engage talent. And we work in a couple different spaces in that. In one space, what we call passive or talent discovery, that's in a place where maybe the company isn't getting the right type of applicants, or they feel the need to go out into the world and try and find people that aren't applying to their jobs. So we have solutions for that use case. And then the other use case is sort of, in our world, it's really the same thing, but it's sort of the opposite side of the data, which is, hey, I just got 40,000 applies to my job because I'm Tesla or SpaceX and everybody wants to work here, but it's an overwhelming number of applies for human recruiters to go through. And if you think about what a human recruiter does in that scenario, or a hiring manager, but whoever it is that's having to vet those people and decide who to talk to first, what they're doing is they're thinking about the job requirements, what this person's going to be doing, and then they're reading resumes or social profiles or whatever the applicant happens to provide, and then they're doing a pattern match in the neural network that's on top of their shoulders. And that's a great neural network, and it's really wonderfully predictive and very smart. However, it's quite slow when we think about having to process through 40,000 applies per month per job, and we scale that globally. So what HiringSolve does is we build artificial neural networks. We build software at the end of the day that is designed to help the recruiter make those decisions more easily and more quickly so that they can be more productive. One of the big differentiators for us is just simply that we focus exclusively on the recruiter as a user. So when we build something like Ray, which is our AI assistant, most of the market that we see in the HR tech space is completely candidate focused. So there are a lot of companies building AI-based chatbots that sit on the front page and want to answer questions and things and maybe qualify candidates through chat or text. Our AI-based assistant is targeted at the recruiter as a user because the recruiting workflow itself is quite complex. If you think about all the stages that it actually takes to go from, hey, I have this job posting or I have this job requirement, I need to hire somebody, all the way through to hiring. It's quite a complex workflow. So the way we approach everything is we've built a tool that a recruiting user or a hiring manager even can talk to and say, here's what I need. I need, the role, for example, if you think about something like I'm recruiting a rocket scientist for SpaceX, and we've decided that the role changed and now it requires a PhD. Well, if I've got 40,000 people that have applied, from a workflow perspective, I now need to go through and disqualify everyone that does not have a PhD. So when we think about how we approach software design, we look to make that easier from a workflow perspective. So a recruiter or a hiring manager can simply say, Ray, for the mechanical engineering pipeline number 7, disqualify everyone that doesn't have a PhD level of education and send them a note, right? So that's something that can save many hours if you think about how many people that could be of work. So those are some of the things that we focus on.
What put you guys on my radar was when I first read a quote from you guys which said machines are biased. Why? Because humans are biased and humans teach machines. And that really resonated with me and captured my imagination. So with artificial intelligence being integrated into HR departments in an effort to take out the bias of hiring, do you think we need to actually start taking a step back and ensure that we really need to take the bias out of AI? And if so, where do you begin with that?
My feeling still reflects that quote, which is the AI is going to be biased most of the time because we teach it. And so I think where you start with that is you start by visualizing what's happening in the process. And you can use AI to do that, to demonstrate where the humans are being biased. I believe that's the only way, that is the place where you have to start. And the reason why is it's actually something that Google figured out quite a long time ago. Whereas if the AI is not biased, if the AI is truly acting in a non-biased way, the human interprets the result as incorrect. So Google a long time ago started to bring out what they call custom search results, right? Because what they figured out was what I want when I search for certain words is quite a bit different. I like to use the example of the word Ubuntu. Ubuntu is an African word, but when I search for it, I mean Linux because it happens to be one of the most popular brand names of Linux. So Google figured out a long time ago, hey, what we need to do in order for humans to consider our search results relevant and correct is we need to bias them, and we need to change them a little bit for each person so that we deliver answers that the human is expecting. What we see on the hiring side is very similar to that. If we remove all bias, and I'm not saying we've achieved this, but if we start to move in that direction where we remove all bias, what we see is the human says, well, this is a terrible person. I don't want to hire these people. This isn't what I was asking for. This is an incorrect result. So what we can do is we can't really remove bias because I believe that sort of leads to that result. What we can do is visualize bias. And by that, I mean, we can have an AI that gently starts to remind the human, well, you said you wanted, female JavaScript engineers, but you consistently deny and refuse to interview any that I present. And you've done that, 70% of the time or 80% of the time or whatever that is. Those are some examples, and we have a whole, that's one of the initiatives that we're working on is what we call diversity analytics, because we see a problem with diversity. There's all this effort to try and make diverse workforces and to try and understand what that means. And there's definitely money being thrown into it to help for technology to help. But the problem is, there are some subtle problems that I believe can only be identified through visualization. So, if we can put more women, for example, we say, well, we want to increase the diversity of our engineering workforce, like Google said a couple of years back, and we think it's 18%. We think it should be 25. The way that gets done in recruiting, there's a few simple ways. First is top of funnel, right? If we're hiring JavaScript engineers for Google, and out of 100 people that get interviewed, only 10 of them are women, I can tell you we're probably not going to move the needle very well. So we have to. So there's a place where technology can help, because you can say things, for example, to Ray. You can say, show me all the JavaScript developers in San Francisco that have 5 years experience, et cetera, et cetera. How many of them are female? Add the females to the top of the list. So you could do something like that. But then you've got additional problems as it goes down the line. And I think this is where visualization and AI can become really powerful, because it can shine light and transparency into these processes. And for example, if we do solve the top of funnel problem, now maybe all 100 people that we're interviewing, maybe they're all women now, because we've worked on that top of funnel problem. But now what we find is that maybe they all, half of them drop out at the first on-site interview, and none of them take the offer. Then we can start to look at analytics by geography, by job role, by trying to understand what's happening. Why are we still not moving the needle? So these are some examples where I think bias is inherent in human processes, but by visualizing and by shining light on where some of that bias is in the human process, I think that's where we have to start.
Now, many people listening will have heard of Amazon's Alexa, Apple's Siri, and Microsoft's Cortana, but I am conscious that you've mentioned Ray a couple of times, which I believe stands for Recruiting Artificial Intelligence. But can you just offer an overview about Ray and what you're achieving with that?
Sure. Well, Ray is inspired by Siri and Alexa, so it works in very much the same way.
Yeah.
It's a conversational assistant. You can talk to it, and it also appears in many different forms. It's a mobile app. It's a web app that you can talk to. It's also something that can be texted to, of course. And basically what it is, if you think about what those interfaces are really good for, they're good for shortcutting work. So when we started building Ray, one of the things that was inspiring me was I was addicted to Siri at the time, and particularly was using it for things like if you say to Siri, "Get me directions to the nearest gas station," that's a workflow shortcut, right? That's something that I could do myself on the phone.
Yeah.
But if you think about all the steps involved, clicking the Maps app and typing gas station and selecting one and then hitting directions, it's much faster and more efficient, and kind of works beautifully for me just to say, "Give me directions to the nearest gas station." So when we started to look at Ray, as I was saying earlier, the workflow of a recruiter is quite complex from a systems perspective, quite complex. So they have to do a lot of systems work, a lot of sorting and searching for data, a lot of moving things around just to get their job done. But they also have to be these very high EQ people. So as we were designing Ray, that was sort of the inspiration, was if we can do that gas station trick that Siri does, but for some of the recruiting workflow tasks, and you can have something where you can simply say, for example, Ray, email everybody that didn't get the job and tell them that we'd love them to consider our next opportunities, and we'll keep them on the list. And Ray can come up and say, "Here's the email. Does this look good?" You can edit it and send it. This is something simple to do with technology today, but it's one of the biggest things that make people unhappy in the candidate experience is, I never got contacted. I didn't get the job, but I never got contacted. I never got told why. I never got told anything at all, right? Because the recruiters are so busy. They've hired someone, now moved on, and the 100 people that applied, only one got the job, and the 99 that are left may or may not hear anything back. So using automation, in this way, and it can be quite proactive too, which is, Ray telling the recruiter, "I've noticed this position has been filled. Would you like me to email everybody that didn't get the job with, one of our templated messages?" And some people say, well, even I don't like talking to a machine, but the truth is, well, in the research we've done, if it's the difference between no response and a machine-based response, people prefer a response, and quite quite ubiquitously prefer a response, especially in something like an employment matter.
So we've got to mention another A word now, which obviously has got to be adoption. So when you're making it easier for recruiters to set those parameters to identify candidates, but using their voice, how have they reacted to that? Is it been any problems or challenges getting people to adopt it?
It's early. It's super early on.
Yeah.
We haven't had a lot of challenges getting adoption. Right now, what we're getting is everybody wants to use it, and everybody has an idea about how they want to use it. The truth is, it's quite limited. Just as Siri, and in some ways, Siri still is, and Alexa still is, right? In other words, it only works for a couple of use cases. The biggest challenge that we see right now is, people see it working in use case 1 and 2, and then they say, I want it to do all these other things, and we're not ready for that yet. So that's probably the bigger challenge than adoption.
Now, I know you have some huge clients as well. One in particular is Staples, which I know is one of your clients. But can you share a use case of any of your clients, just to give listeners a before and afterward picture of how you're actually delivering tangible results for businesses and that hiring process?
So, as you mentioned, Staples is one that we work very, very closely with. What we measure in those customers, and Staples is one that's new for us this year. So we're still in the middle of implementing and measuring that. But I'll use another example, a company called Sodexo, which is a very large company hiring across the board for everything from facilities people to literally executive chefs and kind of everything in between. One of the things HR tends to measure in talent acquisition simply is what we call time to fill or time to hire. So it's the time between management saying we need this person to the time that they're onboarded and in the payroll system. And what we've done some recent studies with Sodexo, particularly around diversity roles, where we've seen a decrease in that time to fill by around 66%. And we've measured it, they have measured it, Sodexo has measured it. Where we're seeing a lot of productivity increase is in what we call the sourcing function, which is candidate identification. And we think about Sodexo as an example. We saw that beautiful sort of 66% reduction in time to fill on diverse roles. The way that's happening, or where HiringSolve fits in that, is we think about something like diversity. Say we're trying to, gender diversity. We need to hire more women. The way that gets implemented in recruiting teams is a highly manual process. You've got the people that are applying for the job, and you've got people that you go out and actively recruit for the job. The challenge is in identifying women or attracting women, in this case, in this example, for the job. HiringSolved has automation around that. So the HiringSolved has automation around that process, meaning we can automatically select or consider women more relevant in this case. So we can do some things that would require many, many, many hours of human effort to do without the software tool. So that's sort of a good example of where our technology is moving the needle and is in this case decreasing time to fill, increasing per recruiter productivity.
I absolutely love what you're doing here, and I also find myself a little bit curious on what's the story behind HiringSolve. Can you tell me about where the idea came from and the years of blood, sweat and tears that got you exactly where you are today? Did you encounter any of these pain points yourself, and is that what put you on this journey?
Yeah, it is actually. It's funny. So I got talked into starting. I'm an engineer by trade and have been for a long time. I got talked into starting a recruiting firm by a really awesome recruiter. And we started this little recruiting company on my couch in about early 2009 in San Francisco. And it was myself and two great recruiters. We started out thinking we will go to all the best tech companies and we will basically hire engineers better than any of them can or any firm they've ever seen. And in a couple of years, we built that into a multi-million-dollar company, and we had customers that included Google and Apple and Cisco and Yahoo and sort of who's who at the time. And we hit our own scalability wall. What that wall was we had built this company on really, really talented individuals that were really smart and really good at engaging people. We had achieved a certain level of growth and just started to run out of runway. Couldn't hire. the people we needed, couldn't train them up fast enough to keep the quality that we needed, that we were known for, and the reputation that we built the company on was starting to suffer. So that's where the idea came from, was just looking at what we were doing every day and trying to think about how we could automate some of it. In the meantime, Google hired one of those original 3 people, and it was it's certainly something that we weren't going to begrudge her for going to Google, because it's a great company. But it got me thinking, gosh, we spent a lot of time training and nurturing these folks, and they can still walk out the door. So how do we make it faster, make it so that we don't have to train them quite as much on the technical stuff, and make a tool that can do some of this work for us? And that's how we got here.
If we look to the future now, it seems you're very well placed. You've got a great foundation, you've got some huge clients, and you're right at the heart of some fantastic technology as that world is continuing to evolve. So what is your grand vision for HiringSolved, and how do you see the company evolving right along with that AI technology?
Well, the grand vision is right baked into the name. We do aim to solve hiring. And if you think about that, it's one of the most interesting places to apply artificial intelligence. The reason why is because everything is higher stakes when you're dealing with people. It's high stakes when you're dealing with anything, healthcare, financial. But when you deal with humans, and particularly in one of the most stressful places in their life, which is getting a new job, it becomes pretty high stakes. It's also, I think, one of the places where we can drive the most benefit. By bringing better technology, we can bring new opportunities to people and better opportunities to people. We can reduce bias, and we can shine light and more transparency into the process. So where we're headed on our path is we're at the very beginning of implementing this technology and implementing artificial intelligence in the HR tech stack and the hiring process, particularly around automating some of these areas, these difficult areas in talent acquisition. As we move forward, what we're seeing is our focus on this technology for the last 7 years has enabled us to start to think about how we can deploy this technology directly to the consumer, because we're completely enterprise focused today. So we're looking at how we can use Ray to be more advisory, be more helpful to everybody. So if you think about one example I like to use is, if you think about somebody who's going through school today and they want to understand, what should I be studying? What will lead to a good lifestyle? What are the trends? How are they changing? What if you could talk to Ray, or you could talk to a bot and work through that? And it could ask you questions like, what do you like to do? What are you studying? What are you interested in? And it was backed up by all of the data and the trends and the analysis of the rolling job requirements. And it could start to tell you, well, here's what that data looks like. And you could say, I want to work for, I want to work for somebody like a SpaceX or a Tesla doing, making cars more safe. It could counsel you and explain to you, well, here's where you are today. Here's some of the steps you could take to get closer to that. So we see a lot of opportunities in kind of advisory and education, in helping people that are in their careers to get new careers, that are underemployed to get more well-employed, or are folks that are just entering or just thinking about entering the job market, and providing an education and advisory service for those folks, so that they're not just sort of toiling away, maybe paying exorbitant costs for a degree that may or may not get them anything when they finally get out of school.
I love what you stand for here, and how you're using technology to bring people together and create opportunities for people. And I think those words are going to resonate with a lot of people listening. So could you just remind them of where they can find you online, and also maybe contact a member of your team if they have any questions about our conversation today? Sure.
So online, we're just HiringSolve.com, or you can contact us on Twitter at twitter.com/HiringSolved. You can also email Ray at HiringSolve.com.
Well, they always say, think big or go home. It was something that resonated with me as soon as you mentioned, I think it was early on in the episode there, that you growing into your name, which is HiringSolved. And that is a big problem to solve and set out right from the very beginning. But And I always say at the end of every episode as well that technology works best when it brings people together, but you're using tech to reduce bias and bring opportunities to people, which has got to be a fantastic thing. And I think we need to hear more positive artificial intelligence stories out there. And I thank you for coming on and sharing that story with me today.
It's my pleasure, Neil.
The fact that HiringSolved is used by companies such as Staples is impressive on its own, but I love how their tool, Ray, has now integrated voice recognition features to make it easier for recruiters to verbally set those parameters to identify their ideal candidates, whether it be by gender, skill, experience, or even veteran status. And they really seem to be ensuring that AI doesn't have implicit biases too. And that's got to be a great thing, isn't it? But hey, what are your thoughts on inherent bias in artificial intelligence and also in our everyday life? And how are you trying to eliminate bias from your company? I want to hear how you're doing these things and I want to share it with this audience. So please email me at techblogwriter@outlook.com, or of course you can tweet me at Neil C. Hughes. But I've taken up far too much time of yours today, and indeed this week. And I've got another episode coming tomorrow, so I better bid you a fond farewell before I outstay my welcome. So a big thank you for listening, and until next time, don't be a stranger.
Thanks for listening to the Tech Blog Writer Podcast. Until next time, remember, technology is best when it brings people together.